About a year ago, I took a coaching course, and as one of the group activities, they asked for us to sit in little groups and discuss the last 2 weeks leading up to a goal race. So, like the training plan for those last 2 weeks. So, I had volunteered my training plan from the last 2 weeks before the Around the Bay 30K race in the spring of 2019, where I had used the Hansen's marathon method, which I followed exactly like the book said. I used the advanced marathon plan, even though I was training for 30K, because this race was going to be like sort of a test before I used the same plan for a marathon buildup. And my history was basically that I most of the time didn't survive any marathon training plans. I would either survive and get to the starting line completely exhausted, or I would end up having the story of one really great training week and then 3 really bad training weeks where I couldn't hit paces. Marathon pace felt like a death march, and I just didn't thrive doing these marathon plans, which were supposedly ideal and put together by a coach that I had at the time. And so I had read the Hansen's marathon method, and I decided, like, the book convinced me that the plan made sense. So I decided to give it a try. And my goal for that race was not even the race time itself, although I did have a race time goal because you needed to plan your paces for training. But my goal was to survive the training. And I had shared this plan, and it surprisingly got a lot of critique, because in the last 2 weeks of the Hansen's marathon method, you end up 10 days before the race. You have your longest Wednesday tempo at marathon pace. So it's like a 16K marathon pace tempo. And then you basically have nothing but easy running until race day. And this is like contrary to sort of most other plans, which will still have some quality in there, and will probably have like the volume decreased a lot more than the Hansen's plan did. The Hansen's plan, the volume does decrease in the last week, but you're still running mostly at the same frequency, and the volume doesn't decrease as much as, like, let's say another plan. So here was for me, which had ended up being, a successful plan, because I ended up going to the race. I ended up feeling great on the starting line. I ended up running the pace I had been training at throughout the whole plan. The plan was successful. I managed to do all the tempo runs, which were like the key workout of the week, more or less at the pace that I had decided that I wanted to do. And this was my perfect plan, but it was everybody else's, like, what the heck are you doing? And so this is sort of the basis of the book that we're going to review today, which will explain that there is not one plan for everybody, and there's not one perfect way of doing anything. And that's why there are so many. That's why it is so confusing in the running world, with plans and gear and different methods of training. Hi, and welcome to the Running Book Reviews podcast, where we review running books to help you decide if you would like to read the book for yourself. We also hope that listening to us chat about running can help keep you motivated about your own running, or maybe inspire you to try something new. My name is Liz Macrusa, and my co-host Alan Miller. We are going to talk with author Amanda Brooks today about her new book, Run to the Finish, which is specifically for the middle of the pack runner.
Okay, thanks, Liz. Let me just give you a brief overview on the book. You guys are not quite as old as me, so you may not have heard of a book that was the Bible when I was a young runner, called The Complete Book of Running by a guy called Jim Fix. I don't know whether you've heard about that, but if you were my age, you would have heard about it, because everybody who ran knew what it was. And it basically told you a bit about everything. So when you didn't know and you said, is this running thing for me? What's it all about? That was the thing to go to, because it gave you good, digestible, useful stuff for all aspects of running. And I kind of think that Amanda's book, Run to the Finish, is sort of a modern day complete book of running. So it's for most runners, and it tells you a bit about most things to do with running. So if you think about, am I a runner or not? It tells you about that. How do I get motivated? What if I get injured? Well, when I get injured, not what if I get injured? I'm going to get injured. Are you going to get injured? How do you stop getting injured? How do you plan for your running? How do you fit it into your life? What about training? What sort of training is good for me? Oh, I think I should be starting to race now. Yes. Oh, races. How do you go about racing? What are the secrets about getting ready to race, during the race, after the race? How do I fit running into my life? It's kind of a modern day, easy rolling encyclopedia of stuff from which you can draw upon. It basically gives you a little bit of everything from basic equipment, training principles, psychology, dreaming just big enough so that you can be a runner, enjoy being a runner, and be the best runner that you can be. In terms of Amanda, before we just say hello to Amanda, Amanda Brooks has been a runner and a running coach and a personal trainer for a number of years now. She holds a degree in journalism. What is it about running books and journalism? Every author we talk to seems to have a journalist degree. You realize, Liz, that if we're going to write a book about running, we'll need to take a journalism degree first.
Yeah, I think so.
But Amanda has a degree in journalism from the University of Missouri. She's featured in about every running magazine you can think of, as well as women's health, fitness forums. And Amanda is the author of the very successful website runtothefinish.com, of the same name as the book Run to the Finish, and lives in Colorado. Boulder, I think we found out. So welcome, Amanda.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
I hope we did you justice with our intro. What I would do is launch you straight into telling us about your book in terms of what made you decide to write this and how did it come about?
Sure. So I have had the website Run to the Finish since 2007. So basically when blogs sort of first came on the scene, I thought, I'll play with this a little. My husband is really tired of me talking about running. So maybe someone else out there would enjoy talking to me about running. And it was really just sort of that fun little side thing for a long time. And right about 2012, I just kind of hit a tipping point where I was writing so much and doing so much, and there was so much happening with it that it either needed to be something I was going to go full into or I needed to stop doing it. And that journalism drive, wanting to be a writer, kicked in, and I just said, I'm going to try this for a little while. And so, I've been writing at least 3 articles a week on that website since 2012. So I had compiled, a lot of research, a lot of information. And I noticed in the last couple of years that I just kept getting this message from people over and over, like, thank you for the way you talk to me about running. I don't always feel like I relate to some of the books where I need to be really fast. I'm not really fast, or I don't think I'm going to get really fast. I just want to stop being injured. I want to have fun, or I'm getting back into this and I'm 40, I'm 50. I don't need some of that stuff. And to me, it felt like there was just a little bit of a gap in some of the books out there. No one was talking to who I lovingly call the middle of the pack. So they're not finishing last, but they know they're never on the podium. They want knowledge, but they don't want to be intimidated by it. And I love working with them. I love coaching with them. So it was a really exciting opportunity for me to figure out how to really pull that into a book that they could feel like, that's me. She's talking to me.
So it's a running book for people who don't think they're real runners.
It's so often the thing that makes me laugh the most is people who often come to me and say, I'm just a beginner, but they've run 10 half marathons and all these other things. And so I wonder where our qualifications kind of are on when do we think we're real and long-term. And
I think it used to be, I'm just a jogger, and kind of the modern day thing has eradicated that. So people don't go, I'm a jogger now. If they run, they say, I'm a runner. but I'm not a real runner.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think it's so crazy because we see that because we run also with a club that's just, all kinds of people coming together, and yeah, a lot of them are like, oh yeah, I'm not a real runner, like I never did intervals, but they've done, like you said, like 10 half marathons. And some of them, like the most recent addition to our club, she's run like a 1:45 half, but never trained on the track or anything. So it's really interesting because like they're definitely real runners, because you don't just get off your couch and run 1:45 and a half.
Yes, absolutely.
So I guess this is sort of why you dedicated a whole chapter to convincing the reader that they are a real runner.
Yeah. I mean, I think I have that discussion with people so often that I was like, we can't pretend this isn't happening. I think it also really changes your mindset to read the rest of the book. Once you are willing to own that label, you act differently. Once you say, I am a runner, not I'm not a real runner, but I am a runner. So I'm willing to foam roll. I'm willing to do the dynamic warm up. Like I know those are runner things to do. And so having that mindset, I feel like shifts all of your training. It doesn't magically make you faster. It doesn't mean like you're not going to have horrible runs, but it feels good. There's a sense of pride in just owning the fact that you're doing something that's really, really hard.
Yeah, one of the things I discovered is my runner's name is Miller Dog, because based on the Amanda Brooks nomenclature system. If you
Yes.
if you remember what you wrote in the book.
I think it's so great to have that, like, I don't know, you can call it your split personality if you want, but your runner personality. So it's that time, especially come race day, where you need to dig into something else and find that other fire. Because a lot of us, we're not going to have that same fire all day long, which is good. But having that thing you can kind of dip into is really fun.
So what's the how do you find that people react to like drills? Because drills are those things that like they will have only seen when they watch the Diamond League on TV, and you watch all the track people warming up, and so you're telling people to do drills. And what kind of reception do you usually get?
The biggest thing for most people is time, right? So they're squeezing their run in around everything else that's happening. And so that's where I just keep coming back to just keep playing with that dynamic warm up. Like if there's anything people are probably tired of me talking about, it's the dynamic warm up, because I just believe it's a game changer. But if I keep coming back to that and I say, cool, so one day a week, just do some drills along with your clamshells, like skip some of the other stuff, they start to realize maybe it's not so hard to fit in. And like anything, just after you've done it a few times, it just becomes more natural to make it part of your routine. But it is very funny that we expect to practice every other sport, but running, we don't think we need to practice at all. Like it's just, I should just be able to do it. So I've always found that kind of amusing.
Yeah, well said.
Liz is doing a plug for our running club, where she says, "Okay, we're going to do some drills now," and they'll look at her as if she's a crazy person. Who is this person?
It's a relatively new
Olympics.
addition.
Why is she giving us drills? Basically, runners skip on that because they don't have time. Do you think?
I do.
I rather wonder whether sometimes they skip on those kind of things because they don't think they're a real runner, and hence they don't really need it.
I think some of it is that
I don't practice my chess because I'm not a real chess player. But I'll play my cousin if he asks me to play.
Yeah. I think we don't hear as much about drills either. So you do kind of think, oh, that's for people running track, because I haven't really, until I would say more recently, seen many of the elite runners like talk about that. Now lately they have been sharing more on social media, like, hey, this is what some stuff looks like. And so I think it's sort of the first time that a lot of distance runners are realizing drills aren't just for track people, because that was sort of our impression. It was just, oh, that's just how you get like super fast, but I need to run really far. And realizing that, oh, if a drill makes me more efficient, then I can actually run farther, easier, is kind of a new way of looking at it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, personally, as an old guy, that's something that I've sort of learned this year. I've had a bit more time and I've done a bit more of that stuff, and I'm actually seeing a benefit. So that's a lesson that I've learned only this year, really.
Alan has not complained about his Achilles being sore for the whole summer. And that's not something that has happened in the past. And he's done more mileage. So there you go.
That's probably a good intro to the term prehab. That comes up in your book, and it's not a term that I was sort of readily familiar with. What's prehab?
Yeah, so I always like to think of how can we avoid rehab? So that point where we actually get to an injury. And for most runners, it's doing a lot of the things that we would do in rehab. It's the physical therapy style movements, but incorporating them into our routine in advance. So almost always that's going to mean glute, core, and hips. 99% of the physical therapists I've ever talked to have said most runners, if they come in, I'm going to see that their hips are weak or their glutes aren't working. So if we can, again, back to that dynamic warm up, can you do some glute bridges and some clamshells? Like, these little things don't take that long. And I think that's, again, we don't do it because we think we need 30 minutes to give to it. But if I do 5 minutes before every single run, that adds up so much more than just trying to squeeze it in once a week. And truly, through all the runners that I've coached, like when they are willing to just do like 3 or 4 exercises pretty consistently, their injury rate drops significantly.
So I actually have a question about warm up, because you do talk about warm ups and not skimping on warm ups. But so one thing I kind of notice is that the people in our club, so for sure, if you're running a marathon, you're not really warming up. I mean, I found that out because I was doing the opposite. I had the opposite problem where I ran my first marathon and I warmed up like it was a 5K. I did drills. I warmed up. I started my warm up an hour before. So, and you're not supposed to do that. But I think a lot of people that start running later, they come from the opposite side where they start by running marathons, and then they might come back to a 10K or something because it's a local race, and they don't do any warm up. And one of the excuses I hear is it's because I'm not running that fast. So how do you convince people to do a proper warm up?
I love it when I can get someone to do it consistently, because they almost always come back and say, you know what's crazy? My runs feel better. That didn't feel so hard. And so I'm like, if I could make your runs feel better and it only takes 5 to 7 minutes, would you be willing to try that? And it's different than when you're warming up for a 10K race or something. You know, it's 5 to 7 minutes of kind of dynamic movement. So it's not high intensity. You're just letting your body know that you're getting ready to ask it to work. So it's getting all that blood flowing. It's warming up our joints. And then even if we walk for a few minutes after that, it really and truly, there's a number of like different studies on it helping with the endurance as you get into some of those longer runs. They feel better towards the end because your body wasn't suddenly just shunted from like sitting in a car to, okay, go run. You gave it a chance to like get into the movement.
In chapter 5, you talk about goal setting, which again, it sounds a little bit advancey. What I like about the book actually is that you deal with advanced subjects, but at the level of the, anybody could deal with it. So you go goal setting. Ooh, that's for pros. Well, we had an argument about, what is your A goal versus your B goal? I'm lucky if I have a goal. But which is quite nice. I think I like that about the book. But so how do you address goal setting?
Yeah, so I'm not, as much of one, everyone, sort of says, set SMART goals and get real technical and real detailed about it. But I think for a lot of us, running is our outlet and our joy. And it's so fun to chase a PR or a time goal. But I'm always kind of looking at, are we chasing something that's realistic for your current lifestyle? Like, are you homeschooling 3 kids, trying to work your full-time job and chasing a 30-minute PR on your marathon? Maybe not the right time. And also just, is that goal going to in any way detract from your joy of the run? So I see that a lot where people will get pretty far into marathon training and be like, I am just hating everything about this. I don't even want to run anymore. And so that could come back to, they have the wrong training plan for them, for sure. But it could just be, it's not the right time to chase that goal. And so I really kind of go back to that a lot for, like I said, the sort of middle of the pack where maybe they're not competitively driven per se, they're doing this for them. And so knowing that we have many races, many years of doing races, you don't have to achieve it all in that one race. So I'm like, just think of having lots of PRs instead of one massive one. Won't that be more fun?
Would you say kind of having a reason to run, or having a why? We talk about having a
Yes.
why.
I love
It's kind
calling
of
it your why.
a good predecessor towards goal setting, which is a bit more hard objectives.
Yeah, I think that why is helpful because invariably in any training, you are going to hit a point where you're tired and it's hard. And if the only thing you're chasing is a time, it is easier to give up or to start skipping runs or whatever. But if you have that why, that I want to know I can do this, or I want to feel proud, or I want to do this for someone, that drive to show up is so much higher, and it exists. Most people have it. They just don't usually take the time to like sit down and think about it. They say, I want to run a 4-hour marathon, and they stop there. But like, if you have that deeper reason, then when you have to do that second 20-mile run, you have a little more mental strength to get there.
So you also talk about like strength training and why it's important. And this, Alan can tell you that this is also something that runners like to neglect, because he was like, oh, no, I just want to run. Like, I like running. And so I'm just going to run. So how do you, first of all, like, without going into why it's important, like I guess you do have to go into why it's important, but how do you get people to buy into that?
You know what's funny is I did an interview with Ryan Hall, I think 2010. So right before he was running like the Miami Marathon. And that was one of his exact statements. I said, do you cross train? And he said, no. If I want to be a better runner, I just need to run more. And it's very funny, obviously, to see now because he is so big into strength training. But yes, that was the mindset for so long. I was not great at strength training because nobody really talked about it. I didn't understand the benefits. And I think now, as more runners, more of us are wanting to run longer. We aren't trying to just run one race. We want to run for a long time. And so starting to kind of realize like, oh, if I'm doing some of this strength stuff, I'm not going to get injured, so I can keep running. Or if I'm doing the strength training, that actually makes me faster. Or if I'm doing the strength training, for a lot of women, it's I'm not losing muscle mass, because certainly as we age and as we distance run, it's very easy to lose muscle. And so then our metabolism goes down. So I think it kind of goes back to like, if I know the person, I can kind of figure out what's been going on in their training and say like, here's how it's going to help. But on a general level, for almost anyone, we know injuries, speed, weight loss are probably one of their top 3 concerns.
You were quite injured at one stage in your sort of running history.
Yes, I've had 2, unfortunately.
But sort of bad injuries that took a long time to recover from, and now you seem to have a track record of being uninjured. You're a walking example of what you're preaching. Did the injuries effectively, were they a positive thing in terms of convincing you that you need to do things differently and reinforcing that? I mean, if there's a good side to look at an injury, how has that helped you?
For sure. The first one was in 2007, and that was my IT band, which is a super common runner issue. And I did sort of neglect the idea of how to get through it. So I went to physical therapy. I did that until it felt fine. And then I did what we all do. I stopped everything.
That's exactly what I do. Don't need to physio anymore because it's not hurting.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Yes. Stopped completely. Ran a marathon, and then I was out of running for 6 months because I could barely walk. I messed it up so bad. And that really was the turning point for me of like, this warm-up thing matters. Like, these little exercises matter. And so I was, from 2007 until 2017, like a niggle, a little ache here and there, but no injuries. 2017, I happened to get on a trampoline and I messed up my knee. So I can't even blame running, but that one did lead to knee surgery, which was frustrating, but I do think I got more consistent than ever with my strength training because I had a period of time where I could not run. So I really finally was like consistent and determined to roll that into my next training cycle, and have been able to really maintain it.
So you mentioned the marathon, and there was you do have some advice in your book that says, don't do a marathon if. I was wondering why you decided to put that in. I think that we kind of have an idea, but
Tell us some of the don't do a marathon ifs, because I found those were fantastic.
Yeah, I think it's because, especially around the fall, usually we have all the big marathons and you're seeing them on TV and you're seeing people cross. And I mean, it is emotional and amazing. And all of a sudden I have all these people that are, I want to run a marathon. It's on my bucket list. and I want you to be a runner. I'm so excited to have you be a runner, but I want you to know that the marathon will possibly suck the soul out of your life. So if you really love going out for beer and pizza and wings every Friday night, be prepared that that's not going to happen anymore. If you like having all of your toenails, there's a very good possibility that's not going to be the case anymore. And it really is kind of coming down to like, are you willing to shift your life a little bit? And kind of like I mentioned earlier, is your life truly, is there enough space for the time that it's going to take? Because all of a sudden your Saturday mornings are 4 hours long because of the warm up, the run, the cool down. And oh, by the way, you've never run that far. So you're sore and you're hobbling up and down stairs.
And how do you convince people? Because it's hard. There's that peer pressure, because oftentimes, like with our club, I've decided that spring marathons are not for me. Like, there's snow, you have to trudge through the snow for all your training, and you're not hitting any paces, and you go into the marathon in the spring and it's the first hot day of the year, and it always ends in me running a mediocre time that I'm never happy with. So I decided I'm not running any more spring marathons. And this is what happens, is that you're part of a club and everybody's running a spring marathon, and everybody's always talking about it. The training plan is geared towards it. So like, how do you get people excited about the other distances?
Yes, it's very hard when you're in a group because you do want to do what the group is doing. That's where I kind of try to dial into like, if we do a half marathon in the spring and then we do the full in the fall and we really get your speed going, then it's really going to help you have an even faster marathon. So kind of like, if we can start to rationalize and see the benefits of that half. And by the way, while they're all still recovering, you'll be back out running already. Just again, going back to I know you want to do this because everyone is doing it, but I want you to feel good. I don't want you to just finish a race and be like, that was horrible, training was horrible. So what if you have more fun training right now, and then we build later on? There is a lot of psychology to running, to getting yourself to do it, to talking yourself out of doing the dumb things. So there is a lot of it.
Yeah, what we've seen is the psychology part of it. It seems to exist at all levels as well. Different types of the psychology, but everybody has an imposter syndrome. I don't think reading around some of the professionals, I think, still are not sure whether they're real runners. Seem to have the same sort of thing. For sure, a half marathon doesn't suck the soul out of your out of your running the way a marathon can.
Yes,
especially when it doesn't go well. I know after I did my first marathon, I did my second one 15 years later.
Truly. My first one went so well, I thought, no one ever says their first goes well. So I was like, I don't think I should do anymore because I
Can never do it twice.
Yes. And so I waited I think 3 or 4 years, and the second one did not go as well. I was right.
Yeah, I think I had a similar experience to you. Like I did my very first marathon actually went really well because I had no real concrete goal. And what had happened was I started the race with this guy, and I was running with this guy, and his friend at certain points was on his bike, and the guy was like, oh, I want a sub 4 hour. So we were running at like 4 hour pace. And eventually he had to walk, and I just kept going. But it's funny because then my subsequent marathons, I had an actual goal and I ran slower.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's crazy how it happens.
Pretty interesting. So you actually talk about diet a little bit in your book, because apparently runners can't just drink beer for hydration and eat chicken wings as post-run recovery meals.
I'm always super interested, just before you tell us how to do it properly, Amanda. I'm always super interested in the nutrition part, because Liz is sort of always focused on this in detail, and it's something that I've never done. I've always been, well, eat some food, eat some more food, and in fact, the whole world is gradually turning. It's taken it 100 years, but it's turning to the Alan Miller nutrition program, which is just eat food, and when you feel okay, stop eating food, and then eat more food, and then run. There's no stigmas. There's no analysis, and that's always what. But I mean, that's the joke. The serious bit is, I suspect the thing that's hurting my marathon performance is my nutrition.
And I feel like nutrition is sort of ever evolving too. So even like our own nutrition, like it's changing as we're changing, is sort of one of the things that I have realized for sure. What worked for me at 20 doesn't work for me now. And I am not a nutritionist. I always say that, but I think so many runners get into running for weight loss. It is a major reason that people start running. And so they have this like calorie balance idea in their head. So rather than thinking about food as nutrition, everything is just calories in, calories out. And they are really confused when the miles are going up, but so is the weight. And it's because we've all been there. We've all done it. Oh, I earned that donut. But then kind of having sort of that mindset flip to what foods actually make me feel better when I run. I think that's such a huge, like, kind of game changer. It doesn't mean there's good food or bad food anymore. It just means, oh, I've noticed like I have better runs if I actually give my body whole foods. And maybe the reason I'm so hungry is because my body is actually craving like vitamins and minerals, not so much calories. Because for sure we have that runner hunger, but a lot of the times it's actually driven because, you know, we're carb loading like crazy and we're missing out on a lot of the actual vitamins and minerals. So it's something I've been very interested in. I'm not, again, not a nutritionist, not a deep dive, but something I'm always kind of watching and refining. And it's fascinating to see how people kind of shift, I feel like, the longer they've been running.
Yeah, and you addressed some of the things like for instance the whole the high fat diet, that
Keto.
the ketogenic diet that people tend to gravitate towards these days. I think it's, last couple of years it's been sort of out there, and it seems like every runner tries that.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's really interesting too, because there's been more and more research lately kind of showing that, especially for women, these high fat diets or the intermittent fasting, it doesn't work for women the way that it does for men. And most of the studies showing weight loss are entirely done in men, because it's very hard to do these studies in women because of hormone changes. So they use men. And I think women tend to, often we fall into those diet traps. And so it's, I hear a lot of women that are, well, okay, I'm going to try this fasting for 18 hours and go do my 20-mile long run, and why is my run going so horrible? Because your body needs food. And so that's unfortunately the other trap that I think we see so much of, is runners under eating. And really that's been a big thing I feel like I've been talking more to people about this year. In fact, for myself, I just have not been that hungry. And as the miles kept going up, I finally told myself I wasn't allowed to train for another marathon until I worked with a nutrition coach to forcibly get my calories up. Because I was just eating intuitively, which sounded fine, but then I realized I was in no way giving my body enough fuel. And I think just being aware of that and being okay to eat enough has been, I think, a big shift. And I'm seeing more people help runners get to that recently. And I love that.
Yeah, I think something we've noticed reading a lot of books and talking to a lot of people of late is that disordered eating, not necessarily eating disorders, if you
Yeah.
catch the difference, but
Yep.
disordered eating seems to be more and more prevalent and becoming to be understood and recognized. And sometimes the mentality of runners, I think we tend to become a little obsessive with respect to the discipline towards running. Got to go so many times a day, dingling, the alarm's gone, I've got to get out of bed and run. And you discipline to that, and then that bleeds into all other aspects of your life.
We
So
love
you become,
data. We love tracking. So yeah.
become obsessive about calorie intake.
Gotta love
And
data.
any obsessiveness around food seems to lead to problems, which is why the Miller diet's superb.
Yeah, I had a few years ago decided that I wanted to run a sub 3 hour marathon, because this has been a project for like over 5 years now. So I went to go see a nutritionist, but it wasn't like a registered dietitian. It was he had done some other type of nutrition course, and he was very much into protein and vegetables, which are in no way bad. They're very good. But then he replaced my entire diet with protein and vegetables, and I was running like 100 kilometers a week, and eventually I felt terrible, but I never made the connection, and it lasted for years because I'm very good at following a plan.
Yes, we will follow a plan if we are told to follow a plan.
And
yes.
if we're told that all it takes is time and we'll get used to it and our body will get used to it and we'll thrive, you're like, oh yes, I'm going to thrive. I'm just going to keep on doing this.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that to me is sort of the same as training plans. Nutrition too, it's the same reason there are a million diets. Different things work for different people. And so as runners, we are actually really in tune with our bodies. We just don't always listen. So if we're fatigued all the time, a lot of times we just kind of brush it off and say, that's just life. But walking around in a state of fatigue is actually not normal. So that's when I'm kind of like, okay, are you sleeping? Are you looking at your food? Did you jump your mileage? Just being willing to ask yourself the question. Sometimes it's an easy fix. You suddenly realize well, I took carbs out of my diet, and since then my runs have been much, much harder.
Yeah. I have to say that my runs are fantastic the day after I eat pasta. It's I tell Alan all the time, I'm like, the days we go for a long run on Saturday morning, it's because Friday night I had like a giant bowl of pasta and I feel fantastic. We even do a pickup during our long run. And I'm like, going so well.
Yeah.
Yeah, oatmeal for breakfast is my secret sauce.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Okay, so in terms of plan, in terms of training plans, you actually go through the training plans. I'm backtracking a little bit, but you actually go through the training plans in your book, and we actually see the Brooks Coyote plan as well, based upon, I guess, all the research that you've done. What are the essential parts of a training plan for a half marathon or a marathon?
Yeah, I think the big thing that gets skipped over most of the time is just spending that little bit of a time base building. So we want to jump right in and immediately do speed work and immediately do all that fun, sexy workouts. And so I think it's starting with, okay, putting in enough miles on your legs, embracing those hills, getting yourself in a routine with strength training. So that base building is kind of that first chunk. And then it is moving into like, how can you play with speed a little bit? And so adding that speed in a smart way, which most training plans do. It's just that I find a lot of runners like to do more than the plan says. So like we start with fartleks a lot of time, or I have a lot of people run by effort. So asking them to do a hard effort or a moderate effort. And I like that because your hard effort on different days may be an entirely different pace. You know, some days you are just on fire and other days everything feels like it's on fire, you know? So I like it when people are training by effort, they get less discouraged. And so I think at that kind of middle of the pack level, it's less intimidating and you can finish any workout feeling like, I did that. Like there was no specific pace. I did the effort. I know I'm going to get the result.
Yeah, one of the things that I think I saw in your dialogue, and one of the things that Liz has taught me, is it doesn't always have to feel hard for it to work. And I think we kind of feel, well, if I finish this session, I'm not exhausted. I've shortchanged myself in some way, and that's not always the case, and shouldn't always be the case. And one of the things you got to learn sometimes is to back off, take it a little easier, so when the tough points come, you can really, really push. So just tiny times where the effort will be intense rather than all the time when the effort's going to be moderately intense.
Yeah, learning to run easy is a skill. Most people really run in what we always kind of call that gray zone. It's not actually easy, but it's not actually hard. So it's just this added amount of stress that we don't realize we're placing on the body, but it's what gets you to that middle to late point in training where suddenly everything hurts and you're burnt out and you're exhausted because you've just done everything a little too hard, but the other stuff maybe not hard enough. And I always love pointing out, because I think it really like drives it home for people. Eliud Kipchoge will start an easy run at a 9-minute pace. So he might dial his easy down to 7.5 or 7, but like, okay, if he's willing to start that much slower, then like, why are you stop being so scared about running easy? We're so worried about our watch.
We spoke with Darren and Finn about his book, Rise of the Ultra Runners, a few weeks ago. And he trained with the Kenyans, his book, Running with the Kenyans. And he said he repeated exactly what you said. He ran with the Kenyans and they were so slow on their easy runs. He's thinking, what are these guys doing? They're 210 marathoners. If it's good for them, it's got to be good for all of us.
Yes.
Yeah, and you, I guess you also mentioned like to not be afraid to walk during the, I think it was the warm-ups and during the run. If you need to take walking breaks. That must have been a hard sell.
Well, I think that goes back to that mindset of not a real runner. Like, oh, real runners never walk. But it was fascinating to me when I lived and trained in Miami for a while that I would run with Boston Marathon qualifying people who would still use run walk, especially there because it's 90 degrees and 90% humidity. And they're very fast runners, but they knew that style on certain days was hugely beneficial for their body to not be so overtaxed and overworked. And I love it. Like trail runners, there's so much trail running out here in Colorado. They know the power of like power hiking up a hill. Like they're like, no, you're conserving energy. But road runners just have this very different, like, oh, if I walk, I have failed. But I'm like, no, if you walk and it means you can actually like increase your distance, or if you walk and it means like you don't finish feeling like you're going to collapse, like the benefits are there. Time on your feet is still time on your feet and will add up.
Liz doesn't actually believe that, Amanda. If you've heard any of our podcasts, you'd know she doesn't actually believe that. We spent 5.5 hours in the mountains doing trail runs, and she goes, "But we've only run 22 kilometers. That's not a proper training session."
Or I'll do things like when you get to the top of the mountain and you're like drinking your Coke, I'll stop my watch because we are not doing any physical activity other than standing at that point.
So I'm standing up, so my watch is running. So we get to the end of a training session on trails, and I've done a 5-hour session, and Liz has done
We got 4 hour, 15 minutes.
4 hours, 15-minute session. And I'll say, "You're such a slacker." But we've actually both done the same training session side by side.
In all fairness to me, it's because in my previous club we actually timed everything. Like everything was in minutes, it wasn't in Ks. So I lived in the city at the time, so like if you went out for a 60-minute run and you didn't stop your watch at the red lights because there were so many of them, you would be missing 10 minutes on your run. That's like cheating yourself of the training.
Yes.
So anyway,
Yes.
Yeah, but wise up.
Sorry, old habits die hard.
Talk to us about a race plan. So we've taken the plunge and decided to enter this half marathon that we've never done before, or a marathon that we've never done before. What are some do's and don'ts that your book offers the reader?
Yeah, so I think it's a little bit of the prehab that we talked about. It's figuring out kind of how to run easy, run hard, and then truly following a plan. So it's very easy to plan hop. We see what someone else is doing that's working over there. And so we just kind of start jumping around, but then you're never really allowing a plan to actually progress appropriately or build appropriately. So I think if you can find one that feels good to you, like feels right based on kind of where you're starting from, then just be willing to follow it. Like it was put together with a purpose, unless you get into it and are just feeling completely overwhelmed or fatigued or something like that. But usually it tends to be more that we see what our friends are doing and think we should do that instead.
So that means that Alan, when he's following the Hanson's plan, he shouldn't just insert a 30K run where there's only supposed to be a 27K run.
Getting her own back on me now. It's true. On the Hanson plan, I couldn't not do the long run that you were supposed to not do. So I would do the extra Ks to bump up the run, so I'd feel like I've done the effort. That's one of the things I need to learn. I'm trying to learn.
And I think that's hard too. I think Hanson's, for me, especially for like new marathoners, is a tough plan because I think there's so much mental around having that distance in your pocket before you show up on race day. And so it is for sure a mental thing to feel like I've run that far, so I know I can run the full distance. But yeah, Hanson's doesn't work for me. It's a great plan. It's not one that works for me. And some of that is I definitely have that mental side of feeling like, oh, I need to know I've run this far to make it that far.
To have the confidence.
Yeah, me too. I felt the same way, which is why I had to like give it a test drive, before a real marathon, because I was like, well, it doesn't matter this 30K race. I mean, it was just a spring race to do with a friend. So it didn't really matter so much. So I'm like, let's just see how this plan feels. And
What about actually on race day itself? So you arrive it's even a weekend process because you're going to a big city marathon somewhere or an adventure somewhere.
Yeah. So race day, race weekend. I think one of the things we kind of forget if we're traveling is do your research ahead of time on what you can have for dinner. Because we probably have a routine for what we've eaten before our long runs. And then for some reason we will get there and be like, oh, there's a pasta dinner and I've not had pasta once in the last 6 months, but that's what I'm going to have tonight. And so instead of getting sucked into that, like think about what you've been eating. And it really does take some prep work ahead of time to kind of know like what restaurants are around there. And to be willing, if you're going to make it a vacation, to make your vacation after the race. You just put on your compression pants, you'll survive, but don't start walking around pre-race to see everything. And then when it comes to race morning, I think everyone gets nervous, and I think that's okay. So instead of letting that freak you out, embracing the nerves as this is a sign that this matters to me, that I'm excited about it. It means that I'm going to have some extra adrenaline so that today I can actually run faster, and kind of not letting it make you anxious, just knowing that's part of it and that's fine. And then still do your little dynamic movements, your warm up. But after that, stop wasting energy. So if it's one of those races where you have to get there super early, find a curb, sit on it. And we stand around for 2 hours on our feet before we're going to go run, not really realizing the energy we're expending, the muscles we're making tired. So sit down, wear your throwaway clothes. I have a pile now of like throwaway gloves and sweatshirts I've acquired over the years, because that was a mistake I made. I don't know how many times. I kept telling myself it wouldn't be that cold at the start line. And then it was always that cold at the start line. And you're at minimum there 30 minutes. And that's usually you're lucky if it's just 30 minutes. So if you're shivering and wasting energy and standing around wasting energy, we don't realize the impact that's going to start having on all the miles. Yeah. So kind of conserving that after you've warmed up, or sit for a while, then do a little warm up. But those things I think are huge.
Yeah.
Just as an anecdote, my claim to fame is the 2018 Boston Marathon, which was the one that Des Linden won in the rain.
Yeah.
You remember the horrendous torrential rain? I ran the whole marathon in a garbage bag.
Yes, the garbage bag trick works.
Superb, keeps you warm. It probably saved my race.
I'm glad I wasn't there that year. I only did Boston once in 2011, and I had never really done a race that was that big. So I didn't realize what it was like to wait for your race to start, because you got on the bus at 6 a.m. and then the race only starts at 11 or something, or 10:30, or I don't remember. Yep. I was freezing, and I mean I had a tracksuit on, I had gloves, and I had a toque, and I was still freezing because I was just immobile for all those hours.
Yes.
So yeah, that section on don't underestimate how cold you'll be. Can totally relate to that.
What's cool about your book is you actually go through for people who've never experienced it and maybe a little intimidated by race day, all the detail of it, even down to the etiquette. What do I do if I need to use the portaloos, and how do I deal with that? Can I leave trash? No. Can I do whatever?
Yeah. Wear your bib on the front, not on the back.
Yeah. One important thing that you made clear to everyone that I found out people in my club didn't know was you can't wear the race shirt on race day if you're doing if you're doing a significant race event like a marathon. You're supposed to earn the shirt.
So you may remember this. When I did my first marathon, you did not get the shirt until you finished, and it was called a finisher's shirt. And so now they give it to you at the beginning because it's just easier, but I still think of it as a finisher's shirt. It's a shirt that says I did this. So yeah, a little superstition.
I guess that's where it came from.
Yeah. That's probably where it came from.
We were in a marathon with the club last year, and one guy just turned up to the start wearing the shirt, or he turned up
No,
to
it was the dinner.
the dinner the night before wearing the shirt. We're like, oh no, that's everybody's marathon ruined. That's it, finished. We might as well just all go home now. You just jinxed the whole club.
Yeah, superstition for sure.
He didn't actually know what we were talking about. So,
He had no idea.
if only we'd had your book, Amanda. We could have said, read this. Come back
So
when you've finished.
So actually, because we're talking about shirts, you actually have a little section about what you actually need to be a runner. Because the thing is, right now, running is a whole, it's a whole market. So there are so many things now. You have, hydration packs, and you've got clothing, and you've got shoes, and you've got GPS watches, and all kinds of fancy activity trackers, and all these things. So you narrow it down to like, what do people actually need? And then
I ran that first marathon in a cotton t-shirt from a garage sale and mesh like basketball shorts that were rolled up at the waist. So certainly more comfortable in gear that I have now, but none of that is what's going to make your pace or make you faster. It's all sort of the nice to have. Like I love testing gear, but at the end of the day, there are a few things I need. I need running shoes that are right for me. So not right for my friend, even though they said they're the best shoes ever. And honestly, even the most basic GPS watch now pretty much has heart rate in it and a number of other features that most people never use. So we love the shiny bells and whistles, but most people never use the majority of it. So it's nice to have that, but even now our phone does so much, and most people tend to run with their phone. So if you don't have the funds for a watch, download a free app on your phone. It will track your run. So truly, it really does come down to like, there are some real small things that are plenty to get started. The right pair of shoes is the one that I skimped on for a while that I wish I hadn't. So the right pair of shoes, a good pair of socks, Body Glide, and like technically, you could get started with that. So to kind of eliminate the excuses of I don't have or I need, like that's enough to get out the door.
But don't you need a really, really good pair of Go Faster sunglasses?
You know,
It
the
sounded
sunglasses
like
do make
you
you
were
look
attached
cool.
to those glasses in your book.
I do love sunglasses. It was kind of one of those weird research things that I learned about where we think about like our shoulders, we hold tension there when we're running. And so it's like, okay, that's wasted energy. But I didn't think about how much wasted energy was in my face when I was squinting all the time. And even if you have the bad sunglasses, so you buy that super cheap pair and it actually distorts your vision a little bit. And so you don't realize that's happening, but it's giving you a headache. It's making your brain work harder. So I do believe in paying for that one really good pair of sunglasses.
Liz will probably tell you about a thing called enclosed cognition, which
I learned
actually
recently.
proves that those sunglasses will work for you.
Mm-hmm.
Is it like having lucky socks?
It's exactly like having
Yeah.
lucky socks. Yep.
Yeah, it does work. There is definitely science to say like that belief factor is huge.
Also, when I was in Australia for the 2000, went to spectate at the 2000 Olympics in Sydney, and all the Australian team were obliged to wear shades for the reason that you said, in terms of they actually did a study which said that the tension release by relaxing your eyes and then relaxing through your body actually made a difference in terms of your running time. It was absolutely minute, the time, but it made a slight difference.
For them, minute is a lot.
Yeah. Okay, so there are some things. If you look good and you feel that you look good, in fact, so if you're tempted to go out and get the glasses, or you really want that hot pink shirt, Liz,
or
or the
those
shoes,
or
go out and
those
get them.
compression running socks that became they became my fast socks. I'd wear them for races until I started to have a few bad races in them, and then I figured that they had worn out their luck.
You seem to be a fan of the treadmill.
I am. I know that a lot of people don't love the treadmill, but I think it's an incredible tool. It gets rid of a lot of excuses when people are worried about, the weather, whether it's snow or in Miami, I needed it because it was so dang hot. So heat or time saver or running in the dark when people are really nervous about that, or safety. I know a lot of very speedy people who also have used it for some pretty stellar races. I think it's very helpful when people are kind of figuring out paces too. Getting on there and being able to set a pace and hold it. It's very helpful when you're training, like doing a run at marathon pace and you've never done that before. So you don't know what that's supposed to feel like, just getting that feeling in your body. So I don't mind running on it. I know it's not everyone's favorite, but I am a big fan of it.
I found out that I don't really mind running on a treadmill either when it's, minus 15 outside and it's a blizzard and you have to do marathon pace. And I'm like, yeah, I guess I'll just go to work early and run on that treadmill.
Yeah, if I can avoid the ice so that I don't hurt myself and then have to be out of running for a month, I'm pretty happy.
But according to your etiquette, if you get onto a treadmill in a gym, don't get on next to somebody else because now you have to race.
You have to race. There is a stated rule. You are now racing.
And in fact, the nature, the tone and the inserts that you use during all the way throughout the book make it extremely readable and very accessible for everybody in terms of, I find it a very easy book to read and a very quick read. And easy to take on a concept because I have a certain sense of humor, and I think you inject humor into nearly everything to say, this can also be fun. I noticed that, most of us runners, we have, a devil and an angel in terms of when we run that say, you can't do this. The devil says, you can't do this. And the angel says, you've worked hard, you can do this. But you actually give them personas and names in the book. I'm trying to conjure them up. Was it Margie?
Margie. Yep.
Margie is the grumpy voice.
Yes, Margie was the one that came to mind for me.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I've got to think now of what my negative voice will be called.
Yeah, it's much easier to push off those thoughts when you are able to put it in that different light and kind of laugh at it, and it becomes a little ridiculous in your head. And I will say for certain, like, no one has to run, so I figure we might as well have fun doing it. Writing a book with humor in it is a little terrifying because I think it's funny. That doesn't mean anyone reading it is going to think it's funny. So
I understand what you mean. As an English person coming into Montreal and working in a French-speaking environment, I used to speak to people and I would say something, and I have an English sense of humor, so it's fairly dry. And I would say something, and then I would say a joke at the end. But most of the people listening were French-speaking people who understood well English, but they didn't understand the subtleties of it. And then there was one English person who would lean in and they would go, "It's a joke." And then everybody would laugh once it had been explained to people that it was a joke. But I certainly found your humor good, Amanda, through there. You actually gave your wonderful persona, your fantastic, positive persona a name as well.
I'm not going to lie, I don't remember it at the moment.
Fantasia Glitz or something like that. Something, wonderful, sort of unicorn type name. Which just makes it all that more identifiable, certainly from my point of view. So, well done.
I think since I haven't had to pull it out in like a year now, because there have been no races.
There's that. Yeah, I really liked that you, you covered actually advanced topics that other books cover, like nutrition and psychology of performance, and you cover all those topics. You just did it in a way that people don't have to be so intimidated by it, I guess. But I like that you didn't, it's not like you're you're not like dumbing it down and saying you don't need all these things. You're just saying these things exist, they're there, they can help you, and then you kind of explain why, which was quite good.
Yeah, I think you really nailed it. I feel like they aren't just things for the elite runner, but they feel a lot of times inaccessible or too much or advanced. So just finding that way to say like, no, these will benefit you too. And like put them in place as you have time. You don't have to figure everything out on day one. It's okay. Like we're all still learning, like as many years as I've been running, as you've been running, we're all still continually figuring things out.
And that's part of the fun.
Mm-hmm.
If you could get it's a bit of a generalization, but if you could get your enthusiastic mid-pack or age group runner and have them all pay attention to you, what are the best pieces of advice that you think you could give them to help them with their running?
The first one is stop skipping the warm-up, which I think I've said a couple of times now. So stop skipping the warm-up. Stop letting your watch determine if it was a good or a bad day. So we get so tied into that pace. You may have had a fantastic run and then you looked at your pace and all of a sudden you're really upset about it for the rest of the day. So stop letting your watch dictate if it was a good or a bad day. And then just sort of that, I think injured runners come back with I'm so lucky I get to run. But when we're in like training and nothing's been going wrong, it's real easy to start taking runs for granted. So just giving yourself that little break to be like, no, even if I managed 3 miles today, like, and I was supposed to do 6, I still did 3. And that's pretty amazing because I could have done nothing.
Okay, it's brilliant.
Good point.
Do you want to do your book summary? Do you want to summarize, Liz, for like as an overall?
Yeah, like what kind of the things that I liked about it.
Yeah.
I guess you already know. Like I like that you incorporated all the advanced things that runners need to know, but that you made it accessible to sort of everybody. So not too in depth for any topic, but enough there to sort of get people started. Like with the prehab, you had some exercises in the book, so people can start with those and that kind of thing. So that was really well done on your part. I like that you did kind of relate it to your own experience as a runner, and so you're sort of like, well, this does work because I tried it. I've got benefit from it. You also shared that you were also skeptical about certain things like warm-ups and like prehab, and you were convinced along the way that these are important things to add to your runs. And I love that you specifically said that carbs are not evil, because I feel like in our society they get a bad rap, and for endurance sports they're actually really important. And people, there's so many runners, like you said, they get into running and sometimes it starts out for weight loss, but they build a passion for it and they want to take it further, but then they're held back by this, I guess, mainstream idea that carbs are terrible, but they're actually really important in certain contexts. So thanks for adding that in.
I think from my point of view, it's this kind of book that you can dip in. I mean, you made a reference to it, Amanda, in terms of saying, you haven't looked at it because you haven't had a race recently. You can just dip in and look at the piece remind yourself of the piece that's mystifying you or that you need at the moment. So you can use it as a bit of a reference guide, but also you can just read through and learn some stuff. You just read through a chapter and go, okay, I know what training programs are about, but then you learn a little bit of something that wasn't so obvious to you. So for me, it's the sort of, as I said at the start, the complete book of running for the modern era and for the mass population. It's very accessible. And I particularly like the sort of ended chapter funnies and photos that say, okay, we've talked about some serious stuff, but it's not completely serious. You have the pictures with the people holding the posters. And we do that as a club as well. We'll do drink tables and we'll hold posters up for people. You realize you're doing all this for a banana, or
yes,
something like that. And it keeps it light and fun and puts it back into perspective. I mean, we do this by choice. Most of us are paying to do it. You also formalized, as I said before, you formalized the fact that you have to earn your marathon shirt to wear it. And that Chris from our club, you hear me, Chris? Are you listening, Chris? Almost jinxed us all completely in last year's Toronto Marathon. Before I ask maybe Liz to wind us up and give us our outro, maybe you could tell us what you're up to now, Amanda. The book's fantastic. We wish you every success with it. I'm sure it will continue to be, for many years, to be a book that people are interested in getting. But so what's taking up your time now?
Yeah, so right now I am working on a project that I don't think I can fully reveal yet. It'll come out in January, but I think it will again help the middle of the pack get a training plan in a very accessible way. So working on that. And then since I had kind of extra time with quarantine, I started running more than I have in 5 years. So I'm going to be attempting my first ultra here in a couple weeks, and just on my own solo, because I didn't want to deal with a race possibly happening or not happening. So I'm pretty excited about that.
So what distance are you going to attempt?
So 50K, just going to start there. I will probably do slightly over that, just in the sense of feeling like it's not a real race. It's not official. So I just want to, I don't even want it to feel like it's supposed to be official. I just want to know if I can do it. But I'm pretty excited because, you know, it's been a good, solid round of training. That never means race day will go as it should, but it's been fun training.
What I would say is, if your new project in January involves anything that is readable, running book reviews are available for contact.
We like reading.
We like reading things
about running.
Me too. I'm positive I've probably read almost every book to author you've talked about. I love reading it.
Okay, maybe we'll try and get you here before our bedtimes this time. Sometimes we talk to UK people and we have them up after midnight. Liz, would you like to give us our wrap?
Thank you for listening to another episode of Running Book Reviews, and a big thank you to the publisher, Hachette Books, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, for providing a review copy, and also for putting us in touch with Amanda for the interview. And if you'd like to leave us feedback on how we can improve the podcast, or you want to suggest a book that you'd like us to review in the future episode, you can leave us a comment on social media. So we are on Facebook and Instagram as Running Book Reviews, or we do have a Twitter account, which is reviews_running. And we can also be reached by email at runningbookrareviews@gmail.com, if that's easier for people.
And Amanda, I guess anybody who wants to interact with you can find you via your fantastic website, runtothefinish.com.
Absolutely. And I'm on pretty much every social channel as Run to the Finish.
Okay, that's great. Well, thank you very much for your time. And again, we hope the book goes from success to success. We would certainly recommend it highly. It was fun and informative. We'll be back with another episode in 2 weeks' time. Bye for now.